Over a recent vacation, I became addicted to this book called Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And today, I'm going to give you 3 tips directly from it that I'm going to take into my personal finance. And let's jump right into it. The first one is a question that you should ask yourself before making a big financial decision. And this is this going to help me sleep at night? Honestly, until I read this in this book, it's not something I've ever really asked myself. The book itself really dives into behavior and how people perceive money and think about money, and it's less about like the analytics and the numbers or any of that stuff behind it. So this question is important because he talks about in the book there's a lot of stories of people who make a ton of money but then they lose it, or people who don't know how to handle their money. The best thing you could do is reflect and understand yourself better, and this is one question that's important because it'll help you understand more about yourself and help you make the right decisions. I actually used this in my own personal life recently where I decided to sell my car. I decided to sell my car and I asked myself, is this going to help me sleep better at night? And the answer was just a resounding yes. Legitimately can't wait. People around me are criticizing me for rushing into this, but the idea of like selling this car and not having the burden of this car is so exciting to me, and I honestly feel like I'm going to sleep a lot better. Not that I'm like sleeping poorly because of it right now. I think it will help me sleep better for sure, or at least that first night. I'll definitely sleep better. Over the course of your life, you're gonna have to make a lot of big financial decisions, and it could be things that are like taking this vacation, taking this risk on a business, taking a risk on a car, for example, whatever it might be. Asking yourself, is this gonna help me sleep at night? I think it seems like it's a really great way to ensure that this decision is going to make you happy in the end, because ultimately money itself is not the thing that's going to make you happy. Like I've always told people around me, like I'm not interested in seeing like a number in my bank account just continue to rise just for the sake of this number continuing to go up. For me, it's about how am I going to leverage this money to improve my life, improve the life of the people around me, and make myself happier. Ultimately, like that's why I accrue money or accumulate it in order to continue to buy and do these things with my money. You want to make sure that if you're making a decision to use your money, you're deciding not to use that money for something else. Ultimately, what you're weighing is like 2 things that may or may not make you happy. They might be actually both things that make you happy, but one more so than the other. And so asking questions like this is a good way to really drill down into your priorities and what's actually important for you. The next one he talks about is lifestyle creep, which is it's harder to kind of stay the same or go down when the amount of money you're making continues to go up. You know, in the book, he talks about a lot of people, they get promotions, they get raises, the amount of things that they can buy naturally goes up, and so they make the decisions to go buy those things, right? They get more subscriptions to this fancier gym, or they buy this car that costs a lot more money, or move into a bigger apartment, whatever it might be. There's this kind of natural laddering up that people do, and the more you put yourself in those situations, the more you'll be surrounded by people who kind of do the same, and it becomes this like race. We're in an economy that is not booming or thriving right now, and obviously things are getting more and more expensive around us with inflation and just costs of everything going up. It feels like really it's almost like while everything gets more expensive, it's like you're effectively not making as much money. For me, I actually am pretty proud of the decision I made to sell the car that I have. It's an amazing car, it's really beautiful, and I love it to pieces, and I always grew up loving cars, and this is like a dream car for me. And when I got it, I was like really happy because you know, it was a symbol of kind of all the work that I'd been putting into my career. It kind of reflected how I felt really about myself as like a high quality, I guess, individual, employee, whatever you want to call it. But it was kind of like this status to myself. And, you know, I didn't get it because I care about what people think of me, anything like that. The point being is like the car is immensely pricey and expensive and I can afford it, but I'm making decisions to cut back in other areas in order to afford it. What I decided recently was I'm gonna sell it. And the cars I'm looking at now are like a quarter of the price of that car. I don't care. And it feels really good to not care. You know, I don't drive a lot. You know, my job is pretty close to me. The gym is close to me. Grocery stores are literally half a mile away. I'm really excited about the idea of like spending my money in other places and saving more money than like continuing to spend it on this car. I know that It'll reduce my status. All of the people who were like ogling at the car when I drive by, which I really don't like, they will not be ogling at me anymore, which I'm very thankful for. So I know in terms of status and perception, that will be taking a hit in terms of how other people perceive me, but I don't care. You know, I didn't buy it for other people. I'm not selling it for other people. Like, I'm doing it all for myself. I'm actually really excited to sell the car and kind of like move on. And for me, I take it as like a really important lesson, both about myself, but also how I think about spending my money in the future. So the book talks about this a lot. You know, I think it's an important lesson that I'm going to take forward into everything that I go on and purchase from here on out. The third one is an awesome quote from the book. It's called "Getting money is one thing, keeping it is another." I love this. There's tons of stories in the books where people who like literally win the lotto and get tons of money and then it all comes crashing and burning. The thing that's important to note here is that getting money takes an entirely different skill set than keeping the money. Getting the money, you know, if I talk about myself, it's how hard I work, it's what fields I decide to go in and what my interests are, the companies that I work at, and how I kind of navigate that day to day. Ultimately, the better I am at those things, the more skills I have, the more money that I will make. Keeping the money, totally different skill set, a lot more softer skills, right? You have to be able to, when the market gets up and down and it's going nuts, you have to be able to be the rock that's steady during that time. When everyone around you is encouraging you to buy this or buy that or do this thing, you have to have the guts to kind of like hold your position and stay firm. You also have to ensure that you're not letting the kind of shiny objects like pull you in, and all the different lifestyles that can pull you in where you're spending a lot more money. Those two skill sets between the two are like radically different. I think it's easy to kind of conflate the two. I know I certainly have, where I said, hey, I have the skills to make the money. Like, that should immediately translate to the skills to keep the money. But that's not actually entirely true. Thankfully, I've been able to keep the money, I think, pretty well, but I always feel like I could do a better job. And so it's pretty interesting that, you know, this is all kind of an emotional, it's a behavioral thing. It also has a lot to do with how you're raised, how your parents or your family saw money. You know, Ramit Sethi is another financial expert, talks a lot about this. You know, there's a lot of like history and emotion that goes into how people think about money, what they spend their money on, or how much they decide to save or not save and things like that. And so treating those two things separately is really important. Being able to kind of focus on one skill set, if you will, in terms of your behavior, while segmenting the other, and appreciating that, hey, just because I know how to keep money doesn't mean, or just because I know how to make money doesn't mean I automatically know how to keep the money. And appreciating that those two things are separate, and being humble enough and putting your ego in the back pocket to know that they are separate, and maybe bringing in experts in your life or hiring people to help you keep your money, it seems like is an important, you know, step or an important thing to acknowledge and being able to kind of keep your money and keep your wealth long term. So that's gonna do it for today's video. I definitely recommend this book. I'm going to keep it near me for many years to come, and I'll probably reference it honestly when I have big financial decisions to make, but definitely go check it out. Thanks to everyone for subscribing and watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.